Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. I called my speech that because I've actually had to tell people that. No, I'm not in the Witness Protection Program. Not actually paid for every move myself, but almost. Or it has been paid for by work or whatever. I was born, not in the Estival month, but in the early spring, April, on Easter Sunday, at my grandparents' town. Now I say that because my parents weren't living in that town when I was born, and I think this has had something to do with the trajectory of my life. I wasn't born in the town my parents were living in, and since then I have moved or had a major change in my life every 3 years. So it's been an exciting life, and I'm old now, so I've moved a lot. When I was born, I actually have a memory of my birth and before my birth. And this is just because it was a family story. And everyone has talked about the night of my birth over and over and over again. Every time we had a family reunion, the night of my birth came up. Because my mother suddenly said, "Oh, I've got to go to the hospital." And my Uncle Paul said, "I'll drive." And he promptly got in the car and drove away. Leaving my parents standing on the porch of my grandparents' house. And everyone has never Paul is actually, all these people are now gone, but he never lived it down. Every family reunion, Paul had to hear the story of how he left Mother standing on the porch and drove off down the street, and then turned around and was like, "Uh-oh," you know. He had to go back and pick me up. I have lived in many different places. I was talking with Ojai. I once worked across the street from where he works in Ankara, Turkey. I've lived in Turkey, I've lived in Germany, I've lived in the UK, and my mother was a war bride and came to this country in 1946. I've never actually done the math, but I kind of assume it was about 9 months before I was born. Because my brother was born in Ireland, and she brought him a babe in arms on the ship. My father, of course, was in the American military and had shipped back in a different ship. So it was very complicated and quite an interesting history. And you know how children don't really know where they are generally. I mean, they can know they're in a different house, but they don't know if they're in a different town or whatever. So I didn't realize that even though I was born in Decatur, Illinois, we didn't actually move to Decatur until I was 4 years old. I was born there, we lived there, I thought I had always lived there. So it's been that kind of an interesting progression in my life. And I have lived in lots of different places and enjoyed lots of different experiences. I don't really have a count of the states that I've lived in, although I've been in all 48 contiguous states, but I have lived in at least 10 of them. And it's been an exciting life. And I think probably most of the moves, I haven't actually planned them, but most of the moves, some of the moves, I think probably I just got itchy feet and started looking around for a different job or something of that nature, and so something would come up and be so good I had to move. But it's been a fun life and a fun, and I learned Spanish, I learned some Turkish. We were speaking a little bit of Turkish earlier. And I've learned German because my second husband was German and I lived in Germany with him. And of course his family didn't speak English. I had to learn German to speak with them. And it's been a fun, exciting way to go. But I actually have had to respond, no, I am not in the Witness Protection Program. How can you afford to move that much? Well, it's kind of been, generally, of course, the people who want to hire me have paid me to move or paid for my move. Thank goodness the Air Force paid for me to move here, and the Army picked up the part from the, where was I living before I went to England? Oh, Colorado. Yes. Sorry, it's a little jumbled. Colorado Springs. I was living in Colorado Springs, which I'm very glad I wasn't at Colorado Springs recently because my friends there were moving out of their houses to avoid the flames. When I lived in Reno, I had that experience. The fire came within a mile of our house. Very scary. Very scary, and lots of my friends in Colorado Springs were quite relieved that they got back into their homes without losing everything that was encased. The actual house is never as much of a shock to your system as the knickknacks and the pictures and those things that you can't always carry with you and take with you and you'll lose. So it's been interesting, it's been fun. People say, well, you can buy a house here. Well, I could buy a house here, but do I want to stay? Am I going to stay? Is it likely that I will stay beyond 5 or 6 years? I hope to be at least working another 5 or 6 years, but is it likely? I don't know. And it used to be you could buy a house and assume that I've owned 3 or 4 houses and always sold them for more than I paid for them, but these days you can not assume that that's going to happen. So you can help me perhaps ring in on whether I should stay or whether I should go, but I am excited to be here now, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to improve my speaking skills at your Toastmasters Club. Thank you so much.